down
Eye in the
there.
Sky traffic watch.
Yeah, it's
Brought to you
fucking
by Ring Central. This is
crashing.
Neil, your eye on
Damn.
traffic, and today looks like a Tuesday. You want my advice? Dispute and connect on Ring Central. They put call, meet, and message all in one app, so you can get one anytime. I'm hearing from Chet in the studio. You're breaking up, Chet. Looks like you should have Central.
Ring Central, simpler communications. Yes, traffic and weather time with the 6-day forecast coming up. But head over to your local Honda dealer's traffic center with Kim Wonderly, where she's going to update on the situation in the Central Valley. Yep, we've had ongoing problems northbound 99 getting up through Ripon, south of the Jacktone turnoff over. Lane is still blocked on both sides of the roadway, so we're seeing miles-long backups both on northbound 99. Coming back to the Bay Area, a couple new problems have come in, Melissa. We have a problem on westbound 92. I was noticing that slow traffic out of Foster City, and westbound 92 as you cross 101 heading out toward Delaware Street. It's at the Delaware Street off-ramp. That's where we're learning of a crash here in the slow lane. That explains some stop-and-go traffic, as I said, from the Foster City side. And also a new crash has come in now for just south of Ray Street. This is said to be a crash that involves a couple of vehicles, two vehicles in the left lane. And, well, now CHP is saying this may be blocking the third from left lane, too. So we have traffic backing up from Guadalupe Parkway. That's just a short band of stop-and-go traffic, actually, out to the scene of this new crash. Your next update, let's call it 9:28 on the traffic leader, KCBS. Thank you, Kim. Mancini Sleep World 6-day forecast now. Introducing Sleep Match exclusively at Mancini Sleep World. We head over to the KPIX5 Weather Center for that forecast.
Hey, good morning. Meteorologist Jessica Birch here. We're so close to the weekend. It's Friday Eve today. And as we extend into our daytime highs today, we're actually sitting right at average in San Francisco at 67 degrees. We'll warm up as we head into the weekend, but it's a lot more pronounced in our inland areas as well as the North Bay and South Bay. San Jose is getting up to 84 today. 72 in Oakland, but once we extend all the way off the areas, that's where we're actually seeing the heat pack on as we extend into the next couple days. Upper 80s today, lower 90s as early as Saturday, but then after that, we'll start cooling down as we head into Sunday and Monday's forecast. Still lots of sunshine to go around, but we'll cool off into the low 80s as early as next Tuesday in those areas. 60s across the board for the coast, though, so if you're heading out there this weekend, it's beautiful. 64 by Saturday, 62 on Sunday. Keep you updated on that here in the Weather Center. But for now, I'm meteorologist Jessica Birch with your KCBS KPI5 First Alert Forecast.
We've got traffic and weather together on the 8s on All News 106.9 and AM 740 KCBS.
Need to find quality candidates fast? You need Indeed, the end-to-end hiring solution. Attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one /credit. The wee hours of the night, when everyone else is fast. You're the one on third shift, burning oil. When a part fails and everything comes to a grinding halt, regardless of what the clock on the wall says, you leap into action. Here is with you, and all the ones who get it done. With 24/7 customer support by phone or click to chat. Call, go to Ranger.com, or just stop by. Ranger, for the ones. Do you struggle with occasional nerve aches in your hands or feet? Try Nervive Nerve Relief. Nervive contains B-complex vitamins and discomfort. Learn more at nervivehealth.com.
KCBS News Time 9:22. That is time for Ask an Expert. Every weekday at this time, we give you direct access to top experts in various fields related to the pandemic. Today, we are going to be discussing long COVID with Dr. Ziad Al-Ali, Chief of Research and Development at the St. Louis VA Hospital and Director of the Epidemiology Center at the Veterans Affairs St. Louis Healthcare System. If you've got a question that you'd like the doctor to answer, please email us at cbsradio.com. Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Are we any closer to understanding what causes long COVID?
So our understanding of long COVID has evolved dramatically over the past couple of years. So we definitely do understand it now better than we did 2 years ago. But the story is still evolving. There's still much, especially in the areas of therapeutics, in the areas of developing treatments for patients with long COVID, and also developing prevent long COVID in people who may get infected with SARS-CoV-2 or with COVID-19.
Does our understanding at this point lead us any closer to knowing who might be at greater risk for long COVID?
So we know that anyone who gets exposed to COVID-19 is at risk of long COVID. There are, especially vulnerable groups who are immunocompromised, people who are who have some chronic disease, people who have been hospitalized. But literally everyone who gets COVID-19 can be at risk of long COVID. That includes children, men, women, young people, and athletes, people who had no prior comorbid conditions at all, previously totally, absolutely healthy, they can still develop COVID-19, long COVID.
Are there variations or a spectrum, let's say, in terms of what kind of symptoms people experience? For example, can you have long COVID with very, very mild symptoms, particularly severe?
No, absolutely. This is a misconception out there that long COVID can only happen in people who have been hospitalized or who have been really sick in the ICU. It's in people who had asymptomatic disease, meaning they had COVID or they tested positive for COVID but had no symptoms at all, or even in people who had really very, very mild disease and nursed it at home for a day or two and the cough or shortness of breath went away, but then they were left with debilitating fatigue, brain fog, and other problems that are sort of specific to long COVID. So it can absolutely happen even in people who have asymptomatic disease or very mild disease to start with.
But are the long COVID themselves, long COVID symptoms themselves, always debilitating, or is it possible to have very mild long COVID symptoms?
No, it ranges. I mean, I sort of said one time, like if you've seen one patient with long COVID, you've seen one patient with long COVID. It really varies. There's some people who have really mild symptoms and that sort of if they notice it, it's there, or some mild brain fog. But then they can sort of carry on with their daily activities and can still, contribute to the workforce, can work, etc., etc. And then the other range, or the other end of the spectrum, you have people with debilitating fatigue. They literally cannot get out of bed, or they get out of bed and they, go to the kitchen or the bathroom and they get exhausted, profoundly exhausted, energy totally depleted, just from doing minimal walking inside the house. It's not even getting outside the house. So the range of symptoms and also a range of manifestations in people with long COVID, and also range of severity from very, very mild to really profoundly disabling.
Given that there's that range of severity, is it possible to have long COVID that's asymptomatic? Would it even be possible to measure that?
People with long COVID, or some people had manifestations of the disease in the form of new onset diabetes and kidney disease, and those could be silent. So there are metabolic consequences of COVID, long-term metabolic consequences of COVID-19 that's happening in some people, and those are really silent diseases. People could be walking around with really significant kidney dysfunction or significant kidney problems and not even know it. So in that way, there could be people out there who are suffering long-term consequences of having COVID-19 and not even know that they.
All right, we are speaking with Dr. Ziad Alali, Chief of Research and Development at the St. Louis VA Hospital and Director of the Clinical Epidemiology Center at the Veterans Affairs St. Louis Healthcare System on Ask an Expert today, talking about long COVID. If you've got a question, email us at askus@kcbsradio.com. Doctor, if you wouldn't mind standing by for 1 second, we've got some problems on the roads, and Kim Wonderly's got the details. Yeah, two of them in the Bay Area right now. We're looking at northbound 280 in San Jose. Before you get to Race Street, they're struggling with the crash here. Lane from the left, traffic backs up at Guadalupe Parkway at Highway 87. The other problem in the San Mateo area, this is westbound 92 at the Delaware Street off-ramp, slow lane blocked by a 3-car crash. That's why traffic's so heavy out of Foster City. Your next update, 9:38 on the traffic leader, KCBS. And we'll be mostly sunny throughout the afternoon once the overcast pushes to the coastline. Highs in the 50s and 60s at the beaches, into the low 90s inland. Traffic and weather together on the 8th on KCBS. KCBS News Time, 9:28. Once again, we are in our Ask an Expert segment, joined by Dr. Ziad Alali, Chief of Research and Development at the St. Louis VA Hospital and Director of Clinical Epidemiology, Veterans Affairs, St. Louis Healthcare System. And Doctor, why don't we get into some of our listener questions now? This one is asking about reinfection. People are being reinfected now because of the different variants. So given that more people are being infected and reinfected, does this raise the risk of long COVID for everybody?
Absolutely, yes. We studied this question actually just recently, and we analyzed 1,000 people who got reinfected versus 250,000 people who had only one infection. What we found that the reinfection contributes additional risk. That means that if you had one infection and you had a second one, that actually further elevates your risk. And also, most importantly, in answering this question, in the long COVID phase, the long COVID. So certainly, if you had one infection, it's absolutely worth it to try to protect yourself from getting a second infection. Because if you dodged the bullet, if you did dodge the bullet and avoided long COVID after the first infection, it might not be the case after the second one. So definitely, absolutely, it's worth it to try to do the extra mile and protect yourself from getting a second infection or a third infection. Absolutely, yes.
By how much the risk for long COVID is increased if you are reinfected with COVID?
So the absolute risk is anywhere between 3 to 5%. 3 to 5 people out of 100 people, when they get reinfected, they might actually develop long COVID. They did not develop after the first infection. And then some people will say, oh, this is really, these are single-digit percentages. But they're profoundly consequential, just because, as you pointed out, the number of people getting reinfection now is astronomically high, especially with BA5. The people come back to the clinics with second infection, some third, some on their fourth infection. So it's absolutely important to make sure people are aware that reinfection is absolutely not benign, and do your best to protect yourself from being reinfected.
All right, moving on to another listener question. Is there a difference in risk of long COVID depending on the different coronavirus variant?
So we don't know the answer to this definitively yet at this point. There are some suggestions that maybe Omicron may have led to maybe milder long COVID or less risk or less burden of long COVID. But that yet still actually sort of need to be verified in larger studies. So the short answer is that we don't completely know now if Omicron produced less long COVID than say Delta or prior. Ongoing work trying to really help us better understand whether different variants produce indeed different risks of long COVID.
Okay, another listener question here. If your experience with long COVID is one of the less severe, it's not the debilitating fatigue, how would you know it's long COVID versus just maybe you're a little bit tired?
Well, that's a very good question. So first of all, definitely seek advice, and seek help of your healthcare professional, your doctor, your primary care physician, or your family physician. That definitely should be addressed to your doctor. And generally speaking, there are things that we can tell, sort of the degree of fatigue, whether it really sort of goes away a day or two, or really, continues with that person. And there are sort of features that might help us disentangle the normal fatigue that people have, or being tired, or maybe due to in some patients may have anemia or other conditions that lead them to fatigue, and then the fatigue that's sort of enigmatic or sort of more emblematic or suggestive of long COVID.
We are talking about long COVID with Dr. Ziad Al-Ali today. He's Chief of Research and Development at the St. Louis VA Hospital and Director of the Clinical Epidemiology Center at the Veterans Affairs St. Louis Healthcare System. And if you've got a question for the doctor and Ask an Expert today, email us at askus@radio.com. All right, moving on, doctor, to some more listener questions. Is there any data indicating at what point after your infection symptoms of long COVID tend to appear? Is it possible for you to have a COVID infection, recover or think you've recovered, and then several weeks later symptoms of long COVID come up?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And we see this a lot. People who had maybe, COVID, several weeks ago, and they, nursed it at home for a couple of days, and they thought they were over it. And then weeks down the road, they start having this, debilitating fatigue or brain fog and other manifestations of long COVID. And when I talked also about the cardiometabolic risk or the risk of metabolic consequences of COVID-19, at this point, it's really managing symptoms, but the caller is absolutely on point. We're really looking for the government or other stakeholders to really do trials to help us understand what affects COVID. actually indeed helps people with long COVID. You know, one of the leading theories about why long COVID really is you know, it manifests in patients who had, you know, COVID-19 is persistence of the virus in immune privileged sites. And Paxlovid really is known to suppress that viral replication. So understanding whether Paxlovid really comes or improves the symptoms or improves outcomes in people with long COVID is very, 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 very important and to know. And this is something that needs to be done in our view yesterday, like, you know, and get answers as soon as possible. But what we now know is that Paxlovid works in the acute phase. Absolutely, yes. In the acute phase. So people who get infected with SARS-CoV-2 or reinfected with SARS-CoV-2, you know, they qualify for Paxlovid, getting access to Paxlovid as soon as possible after infection is key to reduce their risk of severe disease.
All right, another listener question here. It's a little bit long, but a relative had COVID for about a week, then tested negative. After that, developed a rash all over and then blisters and can't walk because of the blisters on the bottom of his feet. Could this possibly be a symptom of long COVID?
It's possible. So it's unclear from the question if this is really persisted. So it's you know, a lot of people had COVID without testing for COVID or tested initially negative for COVID-19. So like just testing once negative for COVID-19 does not really mean that that person does not have COVID. So definitely, you know, this could be happening. Again, the best advice I can give is really seek advice from a professional, from a healthcare provider or a doctor of this. But it's likely that, you know, we definitely see dermatologic manifestation or skin manifestations of long COVID. What's really really puzzling about long COVID is really a disease that can affect nearly every organ system. So the cardinal manifestations are brain fog and fatigue, but long COVID is absolutely not only limited to brain fog and fatigue. There are various manifestations in multiple organ systems, including the skin.
All right. Well, thank you for taking a few minutes to talk to us and for joining us on Ask an Expert. Dr. is Chief of Research and Development at the St. Louis VA Hospital and Director of the Clinical Epidemiology Center at the Veterans Affairs St. Louis Healthcare System. Now, if you missed any of that interview and you'd like to get caught up on it, you can hear it and all of our Ask an Expert interviews on our website. Go to kcbsradio.com, Ask an Expert, or when you're on our homepage, just look under the More button. KCBS News Time, 9:36. We are just over 2 minutes away from your next traffic update.
27 generates hundreds of millions of dollars every year in permanent funding for permanent solutions to homelessness, mental health issues, and addiction in California. Prop 27 does it by taxing and regulating online sports betting for adults 21 and over with strict the most vulnerable people across our state. Prop 27 also generates funding for every single California tribe, including small, disadvantaged tribes who don't own big casinos. That's why homeless service providers, bipartisan local leaders, and California tribes all say yes on 27. Add pay by Yes on 27. Californians for Solutions to Homelessness and Mental Health Support, a coalition of housing and mental health experts, concerned taxpayers and digital sports entertainment and gaming companies. Committee major funding from Betfair Interactive, USDBA, FanDuel Sportsbook.
A global pandemic, unrest, and wild market swings. Welcome to the new normal. For investors looking for financial stability, it's a challenge. But now there's Reliant Capital. Reliant to give you with no market risk of any kind. It's at 12%, and it's eligible for an IRA or 401k rollover. Call 800-788-1000 and get the kind of returns Warren Buffett's been earning for years. Invest in something you can rely on. Call 8,000 for your free brochure.
What's an investor to do these days? In a worldwide pandemic and economically turbulent times, you wonder, what can I find a reliable investment? Answer, Reliant Capital. Reliant could give you high returns with no market. 10 to 12%, and it's eligible for an IRA or 401k rollover. Call 800-788-1000 and get the double-digit returns Warren Buffett's been earning for years. Protect what you've worked for and call 800-788-1000 for your free brochure.
Atlantic Morissette special guest Garbage are coming to Shoreline Amphitheater on August 6th, and KCBS Radio has your chance to win tickets. Head to kcbsradio.com/contest to enter.
Visit Shane Company for unique engagement rings and a no-pressure shopping experience. Christmas
Shanko.com.
KCBS News Time, 9:38. Traffic and weather sponsored by Envision Honda of Milpitas. Let's head back over to your local Honda dealer's traffic center to get an update on the roads from Kim.